It was a cold, crisp Monday morning, the kind where the air bites at your skin and everything seems to move just a little slower. Traffic was heavier than usual, and Sarah knew she was going to be late for work again. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, frustration bubbling up inside her. This wasn't the first time. Her boss, Mr. Cartwright, had already warned her about her tardiness. Sarah's mornings were always chaotic. She was a single mom to a spirited 6-year-old boy, Ethan. Between getting him ready for school, packing his lunch, and dropping him off at the daycare, she barely had time to breathe. Still, she couldn't afford to lose her job. She needed it to pay the bills and keep a roof over their heads. When Sarah finally arrived at the office, she was 15 minutes late. Her heart sank as she saw Mr. Cartwright standing by her desk, his arms crossed and his expression hard. "Sarah," he said sharply, "my office, now." Her coworkers avoided her gaze as she followed him. She could feel their pity, but it didn't help ease the dread pooling in her stomach. Mr. Cartwright didn't waste a second. His tone was sharp, and his face was stern, exuding the kind of authority that left no room for argument. Sarah stood in front of his desk, her palms sweating as he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "This is the third time this month, Sarah," he began, his voice low but firm, each word hitting her like a hammer. "I've given you plenty of chances, but this is a professional environment. We can't have someone who can't respect the schedule." Sarah's throat tightened, and she could feel her heart sinking deeper into her chest. She had prepared herself for this moment during the drive, but now that it was happening, she felt utterly unprepared. Panic clawed at her as she scrambled to find the right words. "Please, Mr. Cartwright," she pleaded, her voice trembling, her eyes beginning to fill with tears. "I'm really sorry, it's just that." "I don't want to hear excuses," he interrupted sharply, raising a hand to silence her. "This isn't personal, Sarah. It's business. I've been more than fair, but this company has standards. I need someone reliable in your position, and unfortunately, you've shown that you can't meet those expectations." His words were cold, cutting through her like shards of glass. Sarah wanted to defend herself, to explain how hard she'd been trying, how she juggled Ethan's needs, the endless daycare pickups and drop-offs, and the pressures of keeping the household afloat on her own. But she knew it wouldn't make a difference. Mr. Cartwright had made up his mind. Her world seemed to crumble in that moment. It wasn't just the loss of a job, it was the loss of stability, of hope. She wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell him how unfair this was. But the words wouldn't come. All she could do was nod, swallowing the lump in her throat as she fought back the tears threatening to spill over. She gathered her belongings in silence, her coworkers watching with a mixture of pity and discomfort. As she walked out of the office for the last time, she tried to hold her head high, carrying what little dignity she had left. But inside, she felt shattered. Life after losing her job was a harsh and unrelenting struggle. Sarah had always been resourceful, but the days stretched on, filled with rejection emails and unanswered applications. She would sit at her kitchen table late into the night, poring over job listings, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but her resolve unwilling to falter. Ethan would sometimes wander out of his room, rubbing his sleepy eyes, and Sarah would quickly put on a brave face, smiling and reassuring him that everything was fine. But things weren't fine. Her savings dwindled faster than she had anticipated, and the bills piled up. She cut back wherever she could, stretching every dollar to its breaking point. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, the weight of her situation seemed unbearable. It was during one of these particularly dark evenings that fate decided to intervene. She was driving home from the grocery store with Ethan in the back seat, his cheerful chatter a welcome distraction from her worries. As they approached an intersection, Sarah noticed a crowd gathering on the side of the road. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the crumpled motorcycle lying in the middle of the street and a figure sprawled on the pavement, motionless. Without hesitation, Sarah pulled over to the curb and jumped out of the car, instructing Ethan to stay put. Her instincts took over as she ran toward the scene. The man on the ground was unconscious, his face pale and streaked with blood. The sight was jarring, but Sarah didn't allow herself to panic. Her training from a first aid course she had taken years ago kicked in, and she quickly assessed the situation. "Someone call 911, she shouted to the bystanders, her voice steady and commanding. A few people fumbled with their phones, but no one else seemed to know what to do. Sarah knelt beside the man, checking his pulse and ensuring his airway was clear. She carefully stabilized his neck, knowing how critical it was to avoid further injury. "It's going to be okay," she whispered softly. Her voice meant as much to comfort herself as it was to reassure the injured man. "Help is on the way, just hold on." Minutes felt like hours as she stayed by his side, monitoring his condition and keeping him as still as possible. When the sound of sirens filled the air, relief washed over her. The paramedics arrived quickly, taking over with practiced efficiency. One of them turned to Sarah and said, "You did good. Your quick thinking might have saved his life." She watched as they carefully loaded the man into the ambulance, her hands trembling from the adrenaline. As the vehicle sped away, Sarah stood there for a moment, her heart still racing. She didn't know who the man was, or whether he would make it, but she silently prayed that he would pull through. Little did she know, her actions that night would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. A week later, Sarah was sitting at her small kitchen table, scrolling through job listings yet again. The weight of uncertainty still pressed heavily on her shoulders. Ethan was playing in the next room, his laughter a small reprieve from her worries. Suddenly her phone buzzed, breaking her concentration. She frowned at the unknown number but picked it up anyway. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Is this Sarah Matthews?" asked a polite voice on the other end. "Yes, this is she," Sarah replied, her heart racing slightly. "This is St. Mary's Hospital," the caller explained. "The man you helped at the accident scene asked us to contact you. He's been recovering well and would like to meet you." Sarah froze, her mind racing back to the chaotic night at the intersection. She had acted on instinct, never expecting anything in return. Part of her hesitated. What would she even say? But curiosity and an undeniable sense of duty pushed her to agree. When the day of the meeting arrived, Sarah felt nervous as she stepped into the hospital. The sterile smell and quiet murmurs of the staff filled the air. A nurse led her down a hallway to a private room. As she approached, she could hear a faint voice inside, speaking with someone. The door opened and Sarah stepped inside. Her breath caught in her throat. Lying in the hospital bed, looking pale but unmistakable, was Mr. Cartwright. The sight of him, once so intimidating in his sharp suits and authoritative demeanor, now frail and vulnerable, rendered her speechless. His face lit up the moment he saw her. "Sarah?" he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "It's you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sarah struggled to process what she was seeing. The man who had fired her, who had caused her so much pain and uncertainty, was now looking at her with eyes full of gratitude. "They told me everything," he continued, his voice hoarse but sincere. "What you did. You saved my life. I don't even have the words to thank you." "I didn't know it was you," Sarah finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize it was you either," Mr. Cartwright admitted, shifting uncomfortably in his bed. "The paramedics told me your name, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I've been a fool, Sarah. I judged you without knowing your story, without understanding what you were going through." His words hung in the air, raw and heavy with emotion. Sarah stood frozen, torn between the lingering hurt of losing her job and the overwhelming compassion that had driven her to help a stranger that night. Mr. Cartwright's voice cracked as he continued, his usually firm demeanor replaced with vulnerability. "I owe you everything, Sarah. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here today." Sarah blinked back tears, her emotions a storm inside her. She thought of the nights she had spent worrying about Ethan, about the bills piling up, about the uncertainty of their future. The man before her had been at the center of so much of her recent pain, yet now he was looking at her as though she had given him a second chance at life. "I don't know what to say," she admitted softly. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No, Sarah," he said firmly, shaking his head. "You didn't just do what anyone would have done. You didn't hesitate. You didn't let anything stop you. You stepped in and saved me when no one else did. That's not something I'll ever forget." Tears glistened in Mr. Cartwright's eyes as he spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since the accident, about how I run my business, about how I treat people. and about how blind I was to what you were going through. I judged you without compassion, and that was wrong." He took a deep breath before continuing. "Sarah, I'd like to offer you a position back at the company, but not the same one. A better role, with flexible hours and support to help you balance your responsibilities as a mother. And more than that, I want to make changes in the workplace to ensure no one else feels unsupported when life throws challenges their way." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. She thought about the humiliation of being fired, the sleepless nights, the tears she had cried. Yet, here was this man, offering not just an apology, but a chance to make things right. Not only for her, but for others like her. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "I don't know what to say, but thank you." For Sarah, it wasn't just about the job offer. It was about the lesson life had taught her in the most unexpected way, that kindness had a way of coming full circle. Even in the darkest moments, there was always light to be found. Months passed, and Sarah's life took a turn for the better. She accepted Mr. Cartwright's offer, and true to his word, he made significant changes at the company. He implemented policies to support employees dealing with personal challenges and fostered a culture of understanding and compassion. Sarah's new role allowed her to spend more time with Ethan while still building her career. The relationship between Sarah and Mr. Cartwright evolved into one of mutual respect and understanding. He often said, the accident was a wake-up call that forced him to reevaluate not just his business practices, but his priorities in life. As for Sarah, she no longer saw herself as a victim of her circumstances. The challenges she had faced only strengthened her resolve, and she found pride in the fact that her resilience and kindness had not only changed her own life, but it also left a lasting impact on someone else's. Every now and then, when Sarah reflected on the series of events that had unfolded, she couldn't help but smile. Life had a funny way of bringing people together, teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. And through it all, she learned that even in the face of adversity, the power of kindness and resilience could spark change, not just for herself, but for the world around her. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more inspiring content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and share your favorite part of the story. Also, don't keep this to yourself. Hit that like button and share this video with your friends and family. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more amazing content for you. Thank you.